Alright, in this video we will talk about the SAT math test. Now there are two SAT math tests, one where you are not allowed to use a calculator and one where you are allowed to use a calculator. And you can tell which one you're working on by this up here. Alright, so we can use a calculator, and test 4 is a calculator allowed test. So you always have 55 minutes for 38 questions on the calculator test and 25 minutes for 20 questions on the non-calculator math test. So we're going to talk about some strategies that will work on both math tests this time, and then perhaps at a later date we'll talk about some things that are calculator specific, where I can show you how you can use your calculator to help you get the answer quicker. So you'll notice that you get more than 1 minute per question, unlike the English test. So the first page of the math test will have some useful information for you, formulas for some of our shapes here. Now all the formulas that you need are not on here. Notice you do not see anything here about arc length or sector area of a circle. Notice you don't see area of a trapezoid on here either. So I always tell my kids, yeah, the formulas are here in case you forget. However, you should know these formulas by now. So most people will do this math test. They'll go 1 through 38. They'll read the problem, do it, go on to the next one, go on to the next one, and so on. I don't like that strategy because all the questions are worth the same amount of points. Now, the math test does generally get easier as you go on. However, maybe you just finished talking about something that a later question asks in the later numbers of the test, like 25 or 26. If you go in order, you may not get there. So what I recommend is a kid reads a question. If they know how to do it right away, go ahead and do the question. If they know how to do it but it's going to take them some time, I have them put a star by it so they know that when they have extra time they can come back and do the question. If they have no idea how to do the question at all, I have them put an X on it and guess so that they don't waste their time on it. Now, if you have no idea what the answer is, you have a 25% chance on the multiple choice part. However, and this is new for the SAT test takers as opposed to ACT, is at the very end of the test in both parts they have what are called student produced responses, where you have to grid in your answer. So if you want an answer of 7/2, you have to write it up here and bubble in the answer choices. Now, when you are answering these types of questions, there's a couple ways you could do it. Leave answers as fractions or decimals. Now, all three of these answers are correct. If you give the SAT any one of these answers, you will get points. Also notice that you can start your answer in the very front or in the very back. So here we started with 2, 0, 1, and we left this blank. Don't put a 0 there, or the scanning machine is going to think you want the answer 2010. So don't put anything here. This is why I always tell kids to do it this way, so they are not tempted to put a 0 at the end. If they do it this way, then there's no way that they can put the number 2010, and they're less likely to try to put a 0 in front. So I suggest doing it this way. I think it's easier for the kids. But going back to guessing, if you have to guess on one of these questions where you have to grid in the answer, the likelihood that you're going to get this question right is very, very low, as opposed to the multiple choice questions where you have a 25% chance of getting it right. So this is why I tell the kids to start with these questions. Okay, if we look at this question right here, A coastal geologist estimates that a certain country's beaches are eroding at a rate of 1.5 feet per year. According to the geologist's estimate, how long will it take in years for the country's beaches to erode by 21 feet? Now that is a pretty simple question. So start here, get this answer right, go to 32. This is another pretty simple question. Get this one right, and do all the short answers or the student-produced response questions. Do all of these following the same strategy where if you know how to do it, take the time and answer the question. If you know it's going to take some time, star the number and come back to it. And the reason I say that is because getting this question right, which is pretty simple, is worth the same amount of points as getting this question right, which is pretty complicated. So if you're going question by question 1 through 38, you'll probably get to around here and start to run out of time. Questions number 28, 29, and 30. For some people, it may be even sooner. So why would you waste time on these questions here that are more difficult when you could have started here and got some questions that are pretty simple and get those easy points? So now we're going to look at some question types that I have seen in these tests over the past couple years. I got a couple examples, so more than a couple examples up here for us to look at. Okay, so this question right here. A lot of times on the SAT, they really don't want to ask you what something is. They're going to more or less ask, what does this mean? So they give you a graph and they give you a story. And I always say, look at the last sentence. According to the graph, Mark was given a head start of how many yards? That is what we're trying to figure out. So now we can look at everything else. Well, if this is time and this is distance, if someone's given a head start, that means that when time is 0, this person started at a different spot. So we can see Paul at 0 seconds started at the distance of 0. When time is 0, Mark started at a distance of 18. So that means Mark had an 18-yard head start. C. It's important to notice your scale here. Okay, each one of these boxes is not 1. They didn't label this one, but they labeled this one as 12, which means this one must be 6. So we're going up by 6s. So you have to be careful of that, and you'll see that in another problem I have picked out. Here. The table above shows some values of the linear function f. Which of the following defines f? Okay, so what I would do with this one is I would plug in your values of n into your answer choices and see which one gives you f of n for all of them. So for example, if I take 3 and plug it into n, I should get 4 in the correct answer. Well, if I plug in n equals 3 right here, I get 3 minus 3, which is 0. So it can't be A. 2 times 3 is 6, minus 4 is 2. Okay, that's not the 4 we need, so it can't be that. So you can go and do this problem this way to eliminate some of your answer choices and do that. Okay, and actually I think, okay, 3 times 3 is 9, minus 5 is 4. Okay, so that one works, but you should check this one as well. 4 times 3 is 12, minus 6 is 6, not 4. So the answer has to be C in this case. A lot of times when I'm stuck on a problem, I start to try to plug in answers to see if that will help me out. Okay, here. This is what I wanted to look at right here, probability. Yeah, so this video I'm kind of just filming, I'm shooting from the hip, you could say, where I really don't have a plan. Kind of, but not a strict plan. Anyway, we see a lot of probability problems on the test. Alright, so it says the table above represents the 50 movies that had the greatest ticket sales in 2012. categorized by Movie Type and Motion Picture Association of America, MPAA rating. Okay, who cares about what the Motion Picture Association of America stands for and what they do? Whatever. What proportion of the movies are comedies with a PG-13 rating? Okay, so we want comedies with a PG-13 rating, which is 4. And it says what proportion of the movies. So I want to get the total of all movies. Okay, and 4 of them are PG-13 comedies. So my answer is going to be 4 out of 50. Well, you look down here, you don't see 4 out of 50, but 4 out of 50 reduces down to 2 over 25. So sometimes I've seen them make you reduce the fraction, other times I've seen it where they do not make you do that. Okay. This is one of those questions where, you know, it's number 32, so it's near the end of the test, and it looks more confusing than it is once you look at everything. I'm going to the end of the question. According to the table, what was the mean age in years of these presidents at the beginning of their terms? Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So this is one of those short answer ones. You see there's no multiple choice. Alright, boys and girls, all of this is asking is for the average or the mean. And if you've forgotten how to calculate the average or mean, you add up all the numbers and divide by how many there are. And actually, they tell you that there's 12 of them in the problem. So just add these up and divide by 12. That is a pretty easy question, but if you're going straight through, you probably would not get here because you'd be stuck at something like this, something like these 2 questions that take some time. Something else that the SAT has done is given questions where there's multiple answers. It says tickets for a school talent show cost $2 for students and $3 for adults. If Chris spends at least $11 but no more than $14 on X student tickets and 1 adult ticket, what is one possible value of X? So if you look at the answer key for this test, and this practice test and answer key is available on the College Board website, you will see that the answer key has more than one answer for X. So just get in that habit where you and your friend may get different answers but still both get the question correct. This question, this goes back to reading the graph, reading the tables and seeing what we're being asked. This one says the graph above shows Marilyn's distance from her campsite during a 3-hour hike. She stopped for 30 minutes during her hike to have lunch. Based on the graph, which of the following is closest to the time she finished lunch and continued her hike? Well, you have to look at the graph and think about, okay, if I'm stopping and eating lunch, how should my distance from my campsite look? Right here, the distance from her to her campsite is the same. So as time is passing from maybe like 110 to 140, during that time period she's not moving. Well, it's probably safe to assume that's when she stopped to have lunch. If she's not getting any further or closer to her campsite, she's not moving. So you need to know how to read this graph and what that means in the problem. Oh, but we see 110 and 140 right here. The question says, which of the following is closest to the time she finished lunch and continued her hike? Oh, she finished here and continued her hike about 140. Now, yes, there's no way to prove that this is 140, but look at your answer choices. It's obviously not 2 o'clock, and halfway between 1 and 2 would be 1:30, and it's greater than 1:30. So if we know that our time needs to be after 1:30 but less than 2, the only answer that we have is 140. So yes, sometimes you may not be able to find an exact correct answer, but you can eliminate the other ones, just like in the other tests. Okay, I have seen this a lot too. Okay, so we have a table here. In 2008, there were 21 states with 10 or more electoral votes as shown in the table above. Based on the table, what was the median number of electoral votes for the 21 states? Now, I have very bright kids who know what median is, and they just, okay, they find the middle here. They say, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they would count and find the middle. What they don't realize is that this is a frequency table, meaning that this is the number of tens we have. So if I were to write all these numbers out in order, we would have 4 tens. And let me try to write this out a little bit here. So if I were to write this out, I'd have 10, 10, 10, 10. Whoops, I don't like that one. Okay. So you get the idea here. Then I would have 4 11s. So 11, 11, 11, 11, 1 12. So this might be one of those problems where a kid could say, yeah, I could write these all out. It'll take some time, but now I know I can get it right. Okay, we don't have any 14s, but we have 3 15s. So I'm not going to write out all of these because, 15 is pretty hard to write with a mouse. So we write it all out, and then you find the middle number. A lot of times kids will just try to find the middle number with the table in this order. But you can't do that because there are 4 10s, 4 11s, and so on. So be careful about what information you are given. Alright, moving on to our second to last problem. Okay, this is another probability problem that you have to be careful of. It says, of the people who chose vanilla ice cream, what fraction chose hot fudge as a topping? So when it says this part right here, of the people who chose vanilla, that means you're only looking at this column right here. We don't care about chocolate. So of the people who chose vanilla, which fraction chose hot fudge? Well, 8 people chose hot fudge, but out of how many people who chose vanilla? 8 plus 5 is 13. So 13 people chose vanilla, and of those, 8 picked hot fudge. So we want 8 over 13 is our answer choice. All right, last question I want to talk about here is this. Okay, you're going to see these a lot, or ones like this a lot. And again, these problems are easier to approach when you come at it through an elimination standpoint, because there's so much information here. So I'm going to read it through, and as I read it, or after I read it, I'm going to go back and tell you some things I notice. Marissa needs to hire at least 10 staff members for an upcoming project. The staff members will be made up of junior directors who will be paid $640 per week, and senior directors who will be paid $880 per week. Her budget for paying the staff members is no more than $9,700 per week. So this means I cannot spend more than this amount of money. She must hire at least, so at least means this number or more, so she must hire at least 3 junior directors and at least 1 senior director. So I have to have 1 or more senior director, or 3 or more, and 3 or more junior directors. Which of the following systems of inequalities represents the conditions described if X is the number of junior directors and Y is the number of senior directors? Okay, so if Y is the number of senior directors, and I have to have at least 1 senior director, I know Y must be greater than or equal to 1. Well, look at C and D. This is Y is less than 1. I see that, and I know it can't be this or this. I'm not even going to look at the others. I'm not. So now I'm looking at these. Well, you could say there's 2 things wrong. You could say if you need to hire at least 10 staff members, well, that means X plus Y, the number of staff you hire, needs to be greater than or equal to 10 if I'm going to hire at least 10. You could have also said if her budget for paying the staff members is no more than $9,700 per week. So that means I cannot spend more than this. Well, right here, this is saying that I'm spending more than $9,700. So either way, this one's wrong, so it must be B. Alright, so that's kind of a quick and dirty math video about some strategies. I'm going to go back and look at some things and see if there's anything I missed in my other videos, and maybe I'll make like an update video soon of things that I missed or things that I have thought of. Please watch the other videos. Also ask questions if I'm unclear about something or if you're wondering about something else, because I'm sure I've forgotten something or I left out a very important strategy. Very soon I will I'll be starting to go through actual test questions. Like I'll do an English test beginning to end, math test beginning to end, reading, and so on. And that way you can see how I approach the test and maybe try what I do to see if it helps you. So thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for future videos. Please subscribe if you have not already. Have a good one. Bye.